Hello,
Hey, everyone!
welcome to Perk Up Your Life. I'm Elisa, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Daniel.
This is the podcast where we believe that every small perk can make a big difference in your life.
Each episode, we bring you tips, insights, and fun facts to help you improve your daily life in simple but meaningful ways.
So, whether you're tuning in during your morning coffee or winding down in the evening, we've got something special for you.
All right, let's get started and perk up your life together. Let me ask you this. How many cups of coffee or tea do you have in a day? Have you ever wondered if it's too much?
Great question, Elisa. For so many of us, caffeine is part of our daily routine. But the real question is, are we consuming it in a way that's truly beneficial?
That's what we'll explore today. Our topic is how to have a healthy relationship with caffeine. It's all about finding that perfect balance.
From the benefits of caffeine to understanding its effects on the body, and even tips for cutting back. If needed, we've got you covered.
So, let's dive in and brew up some knowledge together.
Before we dive into today's conversation, let's warm up with some fun questions about caffeine. Elisa, any questions for us?
All right, here's the first one. What's the recommended daily limit of caffeine for an adult?
I'll take a wild guess. Maybe 2-3 cups of coffee. Or wait, is it less? Not sure.
Good try, Daniel. We'll see what the experts say later. Now, here's the second question. What's your go-to drink for a caffeine boost? Coffee, tea, or maybe something else, like energy drinks?
Oh, coffee for me, no doubt. But I know some people swear by tea or even soda. What about you, listeners?
And here's the fun part. A quiz. Which drink packs more caffeine? An espresso shot, an 8-ounce cup of brewed coffee, or a 16-ounce cup of iced coffee?
Ooh, tricky one. I'll say the iced coffee. But wait, maybe it's the espresso. I'm torn.
Nice try. We'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode, so stay tuned to find out. All right, let's dive into today's topic. How to have a healthy relationship with caffeine.
It's such a relevant topic for so many of us. Whether it's that morning cup of coffee, an afternoon tea, or even a midday energy drink, caffeine is something most people rely on to get through the day.
Definitely. But while caffeine can be a helpful tool for staying alert and focused, it's important to remember that too much of it can cause problems. We've all been there, feeling anxious, restless, or having trouble sleeping after a few too many cups.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance. Caffeine can have positive effects, like boosting energy, enhancing focus, and even lifting your mood, but only if consumed in moderation.
One of the first things to consider is your own sensitivity to caffeine. Some people can drink a cup of coffee in the evening and still fall asleep easily, while others might feel wired for hours after just one cup in the morning.
And that's because everyone's body reacts differently. The general recommendation for adults is to limit caffeine intake to around 400 milligrams per day. That's about 4 cups of brewed coffee. But that can vary depending on your metabolism and tolerance.
That's a good point. If you're someone who's more sensitive to caffeine, it might be worth cutting back a little. But if you're generally okay with it, a few cups a day shouldn't be a problem.
It's all about listening to your body. If you start to feel jittery, anxious, or if you're having trouble sleeping at night, that could be a sign that you've had too much caffeine.
Right. And here's a little tip. If you want to keep your caffeine intake in check, try setting a specific time limit for your first cup of coffee or tea in the morning. For instance, avoid having your first cup too early or too late in the day. Aim to have it within a couple of hours after waking up to avoid disturbing your sleep schedule.
Great advice. And speaking of timing, you might also want to be mindful of how late in the day you're consuming caffeine. Having caffeine too late, especially in the afternoon or evening, can affect your ability to fall asleep.
Absolutely. One of my favorite tips is to switch to lower caffeine options later in the day. For example, Try green tea instead of a strong coffee. Green tea has caffeine, but at much lower levels, so it's a great option if you want a gentle energy boost.
And if you're feeling like you need a boost but don't want the caffeine, try some other natural alternatives. For example, fresh juice or a smoothie with fruit can give you a burst of energy without the jitteriness.
Great suggestion. And hydration is key too. Sometimes what we think is a caffeine craving could just be our body telling us we need more water.
That's so true. I've noticed that when I'm dehydrated, I tend to crave caffeine more. So staying hydrated throughout the day can help reduce those cravings.
Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind is that while caffeine can help with focus and alertness, it's no replacement for sleep. Make sure you're getting enough rest every night to really boost your energy levels in a healthy way.
Yes, good sleep hygiene is just as important as managing your caffeine intake. In fact, getting quality sleep will give you more sustainable energy than relying on caffeine all day.
Speaking of sleep, it's important to remember that caffeine has a half-life of about 3 to 5 hours, meaning that even if you stop drinking coffee in the early afternoon, it could still affect your sleep later in the evening.
So if you're sensitive to caffeine, aim for a cutoff time. Say no caffeine after 2 p.m. to ensure it doesn't interfere with your sleep cycle.
And don't forget about caffeine-free alternatives. Herbal teas like chamomile or peppermint are not only great for winding down, but also provide a soothing ritual without the buzz.
Exactly. So if you find yourself needing a break from caffeine, but still want that warm, comforting drink, herbal tea is the way to go.
You could even try decaf coffee if you miss that familiar taste, but don't want the caffeine. It's a great way to still enjoy the experience without overdoing it on the stimulants.
All great points. But what happens if you go overboard with caffeine? Well, if you've ever had too much, you know about the dreaded caffeine crash. Feeling sluggish, irritable, or just plain exhausted.
And the crash happens because caffeine temporarily stimulates your nervous system, giving you that energy boost. But once it wears off, you might feel even more tired than you were before.
That's why pacing yourself and sticking to a healthy caffeine schedule is key to avoiding the crash and maintaining steady energy throughout the day.
So, to recap, it's all about balance. Enjoy caffeine in moderation. Be mindful of your body's reactions. And keep things in check by staying hydrated and getting enough sleep.
And remember, caffeine can be a great ally when used responsibly. But the real key to sustained energy is making sure you're supporting your body in other ways too.
All right, let's take a closer look at some vocabulary from today's conversation. I'll break down a few key words and phrases related to caffeine and its effects. Sensitivity, meaning the degree to which someone is affected by something, in this case, caffeine. Example, her caffeine sensitivity makes it hard for her to sleep at night. Sensitivity. Half-life, meaning the time it takes for half of a substance, like caffeine, to be eliminated from the body. Example, caffeine has a half-life of about 3-5 hours, meaning it can stay in your system for a while. Half-life. Overconsumption, meaning the act of consuming too much of something, in this case, caffeine. Example, overconsumption of caffeine can lead to anxiety and sleep problems. Overconsumption.
How about this one, Elisa? Burn the candle at both ends.
Ah, yes. Burn the candle at both ends means to work or stay awake for long hours, often to the point of exhaustion.
Like when you're studying all night and still have an early meeting the next morning. That's definitely burning the candle at both ends.
Exactly. Here's an example. She's been burning the candle at both ends with all those late-night study sessions and early meetings.
And how about this one? Wide awake.
Ah, wide awake means being fully alert and awake, often after a caffeine boost or a burst of energy.
Yeah, after a strong cup of coffee, I always feel wide awake and ready to take on the day.
Exactly. All right, Now let's take a quick moment to quiz you on a couple of these terms. Here's the question. Which of these words means the time it takes for caffeine to leave your system? Is it A sensitivity, B half-life, or C hydration?
I'll guess B, half-life.
Good guess. We'll reveal the answer later. But for now, let's move on to the next part. Before we wrap up today's episode, here's a fun fact about caffeine that might surprise you.
Did you know that caffeine is the most widely consumed psychoactive drug in the world? It's used by over 80% of the world's population in some form, whether it's coffee, tea, or even chocolate.
That's right. And despite being so popular, it wasn't always this way. The first documented use of caffeine goes back to the 9th century, when Ethiopian shepherds are said to have noticed that their goats became energetic after eating coffee cherries.
Can you imagine that? If it weren't for those curious goats, who knows when coffee would have become such a global phenomenon?
Exactly. Caffeine has certainly earned its place in many of our daily routines. But as we discussed today, moderation is key.
So now you know a bit more about caffeine's fascinating history and how it affects our bodies.
Now that we've wrapped up our conversation, let's reflect on what we've learned today. Here are a couple of post-listening questions for you. 1. How does your body react to caffeine? Do you notice any positive or negative effects after drinking it? 2. What are some of the tips we discussed today that you could try to improve your relationship with caffeine?
Take a moment to think about your caffeine habits. Could any small changes make a big difference in how you feel during the day?
Remember, we talked about timing your caffeine intake and staying hydrated, so see if those changes help you feel more balanced. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Perk Up Your Life. We hope you've gained some useful tips on how to maintain a healthy relationship with caffeine.
To quickly recap, we learned about the importance of moderation, how caffeine affects different people in different ways, and how timing and hydration can make all the difference.
Remember, caffeine can be a helpful tool if used wisely, but your overall health and well-being should always come first.
And of course, don't forget to tune in for the quiz answer.
The correct answer was B, half-life. That's the time it takes for half of the caffeine to be processed and eliminated by your body.
Now for the quiz from earlier. Which drink typically has more caffeine? An espresso shot or an 8-ounce cup of brewed coffee?
And the answer is an 8-ounce cup of brewed coffee.
That's right. While espresso is more concentrated, an 8-ounce cup of brewed coffee usually contains more caffeine overall, about 95 milligrams compared to the 63 milligrams in an espresso shot.
So next time you're choosing between the two, you might want to go for brewed coffee if you're after a bigger caffeine boost.
We hope you learned something new today.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you'll join us next time for more tips and tricks to help perk up your life.
Until then, stay energized, stay balanced, and as always, take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hey, Elisa, have you ever tried Vietnamese coffee? It's so delicious. I had it when I visited Vietnam in July last year. The strong coffee and the sweetened condensed milk. It's just amazing.
Oh, I've heard so much about it. I need to try it next time I get the chance.